completeness, wholeness as a person. He made me feel integrated. He gave me confidence. And all of a sudden, like a split second, he was just cut out of my life for no apparent reason. It was like having my arm cut off and I was bleeding. That's how I felt. I felt like the blood was gushing out of my body and I was losing all my strength. And the only way I could stop the flow of blood coming off of my severed arm, because that's what it felt like, was I had to cap it by, how is it? I agonized in prayer that 3 weeks. I said, God, you've got to do something for me. Normally, when I'm in emotional distress, Brent calls, it used to be before September 92. In fact, I remember, I think it was January 92. Brent gave me about 2 or 3 days of silence, which was unusual. He was very attentive to me. No, I think it was about a week of silence. So I wrote him a letter and I said, Brent, did I do something to offend you? That guy, the next day, man, he just about deluged me with phone calls, like bling, 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 all through the day. He did not want me to feel that he was losing interest in me. So I was so puzzled. That was January 92. So I was so puzzled in September 92 why he wasn't doing the same thing. I said, Brent, I'm not sleeping. I said, I can't eat. I'm so worried. I said, what have I done? Are you saying goodbye? Silence. Absolute silence. I said, this isn't like him. Something must be terribly wrong. I said, what's going on? Is he dead? I mean, I didn't know what was going on. I was worried, sick about him. And I was especially concerned because you've got to understand, my feelings for this guy were so intense that I was willing to write a teleplay where I was staying up till 2 in the morning, getting up. I didn't sleep good. I pushed myself so hard on that teleplay. I was averaging 5 hours of sleep, 5 or 6 hours of sleep most nights. And plus I wasn't sleeping good anyway because I got off all my psychiatric meds and the tranquilizers. I didn't want to get back on them. But it was more than that. I was pushing myself to write a masterpiece for him. I'm not exaggerating about anything. Not one thing. In fact, when I was growing up as a teenager, you know what my mother used to accuse me of? She used to come to me and she would say, Gail, you know what your biggest problem is? You're too honest. She said, you are too honest. She said, it's going to get you in trouble. She said, sometimes you need to lie a little bit. She said, because if you tell people the truth, they'll use it against you. She said, you're too honest. In fact, I got in trouble one time for being too honest. I was working for a bunch of lawyers for the IRS. This was in 1984 and 1985. And one of the lawyers, his name was Mr. Abramitis. He was the second one in charge. Pretty big, he's a big shot at this firm. And he asked me to lie for him on the telephone. You know what I told that lawyer? I said, I can do anything you want, but I'm sorry, it goes against my Christian convictions to lie for you on the phone, and I'm not going to do it. I said, I refuse to do this, and he got mad at me. He looked at me like, you're being ridiculous. I said, I am not going to lie on the phone. I said, you can have me do anything else you want. Now, I've changed. I've gotten a little bit more flexible. I agree with my mother, but that's the way I was. He was getting aggravating calls from people that were mad about their taxes, and he didn't want to talk to them. He told me to lie and say he wasn't there. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. He got really mad at me. That's how I was. I refused to lie for him on the telephone. What made me change and start becoming a little bit more dishonest was after Brent came into my life. And I really had some scruples about it a little bit, because I would start lying about Brent. What I mean is but to my husband. If my husband asked who that was, I wouldn't tell him it was Brent. If I went to mail a letter to Brent, I would lie and say that I wasn't doing that. That's when I started lying, when I tried to protect Brent. I justified it by saying that Rahab, the harlot, lied when she protected the spies. which is true, and God rewarded her for it. But I have been a very honest person. And if you look back over my statements and correlate that or compare that with what I'm saying now, you're not going to find any inconsistencies. And the reason that I've been willing to have myself hooked onto this nerve machine, and the reason I'm willing to let the world into my mind, and the reason I'm willing to subject myself to lie detector tests, and the reason that I'm willing to have all of my statements aired publicly is because I know I'm an honest person. And I know they're not going to find inconsistencies in my statements and my testimonies. Because I know that I've told the truth always as I see it. If I've lied, it's been because I believed a lie. It wasn't intentional. The only time in my whole life where I really lied, and this is the truth, is when I've tried to protect Brent. And that's the biggest lying I've done in my whole life. And I didn't enjoy it. I've always been honest. And I've gotten in trouble for it. And I almost lost a job over it. That lawyer didn't appreciate it, that I wouldn't lie for him on the phone. But to my amazement, we came up with some sort of compromise, and he found a way to work around my Christian views. I remember the lawyers did tell me one thing. They said, all right, we'll respect your Christian beliefs, but do us one favor. Just please don't witness to people on the telephone. I said, oh, no, I won't do that. I said, I don't think that would be proper. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to witness to people on the telephone about Jesus. They were worried about that. They could tell I was very devout. To give you an idea how devout a Christian I was, I never smoked a cigarette my whole life. Not one cigarette. I've never been drunk. The most alcohol that I drank in my whole life, I think, was 2 sips of a beer. And I concluded that it tasted terrible, and I wasn't going to waste my time with this stuff. And I've never used illegal drugs. I was saved when I was 14.